right. Welcome to another episode of the Aetherica podcast. Um, Joined with Ike Baker, as always. How you doing, Ike?
Good. How are you?
Good. Um, so this episode, I think we're gonna maybe label it something along the lines of Freedom 2, or actually I think we actually did a Freedom 2, so it might be a Freedom 3 episode, but similar
Freedom.
subject. Freedom.
Freedom.
Yeah. Um,
Freedom.
one of the things that you were kind of wanting to touch on a little bit was something revolving around some of the founding ideals. And so I guess, yeah, maybe I'll just ask you, like, what were some of the particular founding ideals that stood out to you, and why are they kind of coming to the surface in your reality right now?
Well, it's July 9th.
What was
So
it?
it's July 9th.
Hmm.
So
After
we
July
just
4th.
had we
Yeah.
just had America's Independence Day.
Yes. I went to bed at eight
And
o'clock, by the way, on that day.
yeah. I well, we didn't do much, but we got out, sort of performatively had a celebration. And I was really discouraged with the lack of, I don't know, acknowledgement that the holiday got. Everybody, they kind of like, some people want to just be like, they'll acknowledge the holiday, but then they'll say something to the effect that like, it's the same bullshit people do on like Mother's Day or Father's Day when they're like, for everybody that didn't have a father, I see you, and that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Now's not the fucking day, you know. Um, we're here to appreciate the good that does exist. And I think people in this activist culture, right? We've been increasingly over the past 20 years. Why do I say 20? Well, because if you had your head not up your fucking ass, you saw the messaging, you saw the writing on the wall, you saw it creeping into pockets, um, subcultures. I mean, I was indoctrinated, in the same way that people are nowadays. Just luckily, I did it way fucking earlier, 2007, 2005. Um, and so I was able to go through that period of, as Mark likes to say, therapeutic blasphemy, and kind of feeling like I'm the man with the megaphone and I'm going to make a change and I got to offer my voice. But I wasn't, I was critical of institutions. I was critical of common knowledge. Great. But I wasn't critical of the things I was reading, the things I was consuming at that time. Wasn't critical about them. As a matter of fact that the things I was reading were critical about the institutions automatically made it so that there was a greater probability that I was going to buy into this shit. And look past where it was coming from and any kind of potential agendas. So we've been molded now for 20 years, maybe 25, maybe more, right? It all starts in the music. That's where it all comes from. All social change with the youth comes from the music. So who really knows? But because that's the repository of youth culture for, I don't know, 50 years, 70 years at this point. But all that time we've been molded into increasingly more, we have become more sociopolitically tribal, right? So I'm seeing this. I'm seeing the repercussion. I'm seeing it actioned out in this fucking, you know, uh, this sort of marketplace for opinions. It's like a some sort of weird street bazaar that you go to, and instead of selling you things, people are selling you their fucking ideas, their bullshit. Secondhand. It's all secondhand. Um,
Yeah.
because the really unique stuff the stuff that's getting you to question both sides, both narratives, right? Because there's that Hegelian dialectic they're trying to get us to just volley back and forth again. The ones that are truly firsthand ideas, quality ideas, they're silenced. Their reach is throttled. They're effectively silenced by the algorithm, if not completely banned from the platform, right? So seeing a lot of this on the 4th of July, it was very discouraging. So
Yeah, it
I
is.
thought,
It's discouraging. It's kind of a bummer because you would hope it would be one of those, things that kind of keeps the unification um of different groups and all of those sorts of things. But I think that people are just largely so discouraged right now, um, that it's kind of given rise to, um, you know, nobody really trusts the government anymore, which you can't blame them.
yeah,
And it's not necessarily about trusting the government, but at least what Independence Day should represent, in my opinion, is, you know, leaving Great Britain, becoming free from tyranny and celebrating those original ideas that gave rise to the greatness of, at least the greatness that we did have when we had it, the original ideas behind that, and that's, I mean, that's, the Declaration of Independence, for example.
yeah,
Thomas Jefferson writing the letter, giving it to the King of England, saying basically, "Hey, uh, you're oppressing us, and we're dipping out." And that's a
yeah.
something.
For over a 2% tax, over a 2% tax.
Yeah,
He said, "Hey, King George, go fuck yourself." And we're being taxed like what, like 37% right now. And we're like,
yeah,
and you know what? To your point of people not trusting the government, bullshit. There's a huge subsection of people that trust the government implicitly right now, like totally. And those people are fucking retarded. I
yeah,
mean, I don't even know. I have no idea. Like, it's not even naivety. There's something fucking wrong with your brain if you trust Biden,
yeah. The government
or
as
if
it
you,
stands is a joke.
or if you trust Trump. You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying? Like, nobody's coming to fucking save you. Nobody's coming to save you, pal. It's just a volley. It's just back and forth. There's agendas. There's certain things that have to happen for the controlled demolition of the economy in the country. Industries. Look at the flight industry right now. Boeing got charged like whatever, $234 million. It's all part of a controlled demolition of industries. This is going to destroy the over time, it's going to corrode the ability for normal people to be able to afford a flight. There'll probably be like two airlines, and you'll need to be like Jeff Bezos rich in order to fucking fly. And meantime, we're over here like, yeah, get him, get Boeing, because it's like we're just these frothing at the mouth, foaming fucking idiots that want to see everybody fail because of how fucking miserable we are. But it's our choices. It's our choices. Okay. And the thing is, human beings, we have an innate capacity to make good choices, right? We have reason. In the Platonic system, it's called logistikon, right? It was the rational part of the soul. The rational part of the soul was supposed to govern the other parts of the soul, right? Three parts of the soul, according to Plato and the Neoplatonic philosophers: the appetitive, right? The part that has needs, desires, cravings, aversions; the spirited, the part that is emotional, mostly concerned really with anger, strong emotion; and then the rational, the logistikon. The A person could not be considered just, meaning equilibrated. They couldn't be considered fully human unless the lower two parts of the soul consented to be ruled by the higher. Okay. And right now, they've got the
Hmm.
rational part of the soul underneath, and the spirited and the appetitive are like this fucking chimera, this like two-headed monster that's just dominating everything right now. And they've
Yeah.
effectively buried the rational part of the soul underneath those two parts. And so, the question is, it's like, for anybody that's been following the World Economic Forum stuff, it's like you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. And the other stuff where they're talking about travel will be over. They're not telling us the future of policy. They're telling us the future of economics, right? That they're the World Economic Forum. So yes, I mean, it's all being telegraphed and we're watching it controlled demolition style all around us. We're letting it happen because we're fucking pussies. We're fat, lazy cowards, fucking cowards. We
I
should be
think,
out there, literally, we should be out there burning these fucking people. I mean, like their property, taking everything from them, not because we want to, and not because we're angry, because they're not going to stop unless that's what we do. They're not going to stop. No one's coming to save us. So the thing is, I wasn't upset with people shitting on the government. That's all the United States was. That's what made the United States great, was that it shit on its fucking government, right? It created this system where whoever was in power was constantly fought. They made it so that the different branches of the government were constantly fighting with each other. And so things happened very, very slowly. If and when there was change, it was very, very slow. That's a fucking good thing. People they complain about like how slow, how long it did. No, that's a fucking good thing. You want that constant battle between the different, because that keeps it keeps it from any one section or any one person or persons from having too much power. And so my thing is that I like to think about not just the ideals that made this country great, but what were the philosophies behind those ideals? How did those people arrive at those ideals, right? Farmers, fucking soldiers. How did they, what were they reading? What had affected their soul? What kind of a lifestyle or trajectory of being in this world led them to really understand how to do that, why to do it? Because we don't actually have any fucking idea. We think we know. We have no idea what the founding fathers of this country were trying to accomplish, what they said they were going to. Nobody reads primary sources anymore. Nobody gives a
yeah,
shit.
I think,
It's
a lot of them were pretty, there's differences in opinion when it comes to some of the founding fathers' understandings of human nature. And I think a lot of it comes from sources like Hobbes, from Hume. They're probably reading like John Locke, is somebody that's pretty foundational. But Thomas Paine, he's common sense. That was kind of what kicked off the justification for the people of the 13 colonies that decided to have their independence from Great Britain. And I think, I don't know if that was published anonymously, but that was kind of like what was the predecessor to the Declaration of Independence. And you said something earlier about governance in relation to consent when you were talking about the, can you say that again, what you're talking about in the mind, or you have to have this higher,
the logisticon, the rational part of the soul.
yeah, and you said something about consent in regard to that. Remember
Oh
what you said?
yeah, yeah, yeah. The lower parts of the soul, in order to be considered just in the Platonic model,
Hmm.
we're talking Plato here, and the Platonic tradition, in order to be considered just, to be considered fully human and not a slave to the animal aspects of ourself. Because we're not animals. We're not animals.
Yeah.
We might be. My body may be mammalian, but I'm a fucking anomaly. This mammal can play basketball. You know what I'm saying? This mammal can write two fucking books at the same time. This mammal can operate a fucking computer. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Don't tell me I'm an animal. Go ahead, be an animal. You wanna call yourself a fucking animal? Go be an animal. Go play
But
in the fucking dirt. But the thing is, we have a part of ourselves that is beholden, right? That's the whole dichotomy, the spiritual dichotomy, the existential dilemma of mankind since the beginning until maybe 200 years ago. We decided to push this out of our fucking brains in exchange for, I don't know, SpongeBob. Until 200 years ago, it was like, yeah, we're a spiritual being chained to a fucking animal body. How do we rectify this? What are the potential dangers? Where are we going wrong? How do we talk about it so that we can navigate this thing utilizing the highest parts of ourselves instead of dragging ourselves through the mud, which is not dignified. It does
Mhm.
not dignify the soul. It corrupts the soul by actually inclining it, conditioning the soul towards things that are contra to its nature. Being
Yeah.
here, that's the risk. That's the whole thing of the weighing of the heart ceremony, and why you were, if your heart wasn't lighter than a feather, you'd get thrown into the belly of the crocodile, hippopotamus, Sobek, whoever it was. This is the same thing in the Platonic stuff, and the same verbiage is constantly reiterated. It's because if you want to be an animal, you want to live your life like an animal, your soul is going to be conditioned towards those animal desires. And it's going to continually, almost automatically choose to reincarnate. Because if you have all these physical desires, these chains really to materiality and life in materiality, and you dead, but your consciousness still survives. You have no way of gratifying the ways in which your soul has been conditioned. Yeah, you're gonna be like, get me the fuck out of here. I can't eat, I can't sleep, I can't do this, I can't fuck. I miss my kids, I miss my mother, I miss reading, I miss the grass, I miss the sun. You're going to willingly choose to come back. And so, the whole idea of being here, um, is to just make sure that the rational, the lower two parts of the soul, the appetitive and the desirous. And by the way, just remember that these are ways of talking about this stuff. Okay, I can't like point onto my body where the fucking appetitive, and it's just ways of conceptualizing this stuff. So whatever, the appetitive and the desire and the spirited portions, the two lower portions of the soul, of the self, they have to willingly consent to be ruled by the higher, the rational, the logistikon. That's the only way that a person philosophically could be considered just or fully human.
And that's why I thought it was interesting that you said that because so, when when Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, had it sent to the King of England, basically, saying, hey, you're violating our natural rights and we're doing our own thing. This whole thing revolves around the idea of the consent of the governed. And that was, you know, part of the reason and the justification for declaring the independence in the first place because of the tyranny or the oppression that wasn't consented by the people that were being governed. And so that stuck out to me when you said that. I wanted to bring that up.
Yeah. And I mean, it's the same thing if you look at it microcosmically, analogically, fractally, however you want to look at it. It's the same thing. The people who are not fit to rule, because not everyone is fit to rule. The people who are not fit to rule need to consent to be ruled. But that's only allowable if their options dictate that they can trust this person. This is ages old thing. This goes back to the divine right of kingship.
Mhm.
Okay. We talk about it in the Republic, right? I mean, you read the Republic, it's stunning, it's shocking, it's almost like a eugenics dystopia. But the thing is, Plato didn't really have, at that point in his life, a really positive outlook on human affairs. He had lived through a tremendous amount of political turmoil and tyranny, outright fucking tyranny, in the city of Athens, right? The city of Athens was like the paragon of the city. It was supposed to be progressive, modern, supposed to be the light of the world in the Mediterranean, and it was subject to tyranny. Somebody had taken it over, a group of people had taken it over,
Yeah.
and he lived through that. And so there's a lot of politics in his writing, but the thing that he basically says is, first of all, Plato and Socrates hated democracy. They hated it because what do you mean? What do you mean the guy who's wiping his ass with a stick gets a vote? You know, like what do you mean that that guy has to say? Or the even worse, the tyrant, the guy who we know is bad, who does not have the best interests of anyone else really other than himself at heart. He gets to say, you know, so they didn't like democracy. Well, that wasn't a thing that they enjoyed. Plato and Socrates espoused, I mean, we don't really know what Plato thought. We can assume, right? I think it's in his seventh epistle, might be a different one, but his seventh epistle, which again, the authenticity of it coming from Plato is contested. But the seventh letter basically says, I never wrote down the philosophy of Plato. The dialogues are Socrates made beautiful, but the philosophy of Plato will never be written down. So we don't really know if that was what he believed, but he cared enough about what Socrates had to say to write these dialogues about him. So at least Socrates says in the Republic, the only one fit to rule is the one who can rule himself completely and entirely.
Mm,
That's it. And he called him the philosopher king. And
yeah.
a lot of Freemasonic allegory is based on that, right? Because in Freemasonry, our big mythos is the Temple of Solomon and Solomon King, and what was he, right? He's the archetype of the philosopher king. He was why he had it was wiser than all the kings, all the regents, all the wisdom of Egypt and Syria, wiser than all of them, according to the ancient writings. And so he was the philosopher king, and that's why in his time his people prospered, his kingdom prospered, right? He built the temple. He actually
Yeah.
built the temple, and so these are the types of people that Plato and Socrates are talking about. You need the philosopher king. Now, the thing is, you can leave that to somebody else or you can do it,
Yeah.
right? Because then either way, you're free. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You could live in a fucking cage if you are moral and you are just and you've done everything that you can and you have purified yourself in that way, you are still free. You're still free.
And it's so fascinating to me because we always often a lot of the population thinks of themselves as being very evolved and intelligent compared to the older generations. But when you look back
Yeah.
at the way that these people were communicating and their level of uh at least the upper class and the educated class, the letters that they wrote and their minds. I mean, most people will likely go their whole lives without even contemplating these questions about uh, a democracy or a republic or how people are to be governed or what the nature of a philosopher king is and why that's beneficial. But it's just fascinating to me because, like, looking at all the history of what gave rise to the United States as an experiment, and you look at like so you have, I guess, the Articles of Confederation. That was the first constitution. But then the art
Which let me say, and I know that you and I briefly spoke about the Federalist Papers, the first Constitution, or at least the first draft of the Constitution, proposed the complete and total and utter abolition of slavery.
interesting.
And the only two states that refused to sign it, or colonies at the time, were South Carolina and Georgia. Everybody else was on board.
Hmm.
And who wrote that? Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah. And so that was 1776. Um, which, a lot of people you'll see people with 1776 shirts. I don't even know if, they're aware that what that refers to, but uh basically like the Articles of Confederation, they didn't embolden the Federalists and they more so strengthened the states. And so federalism it's basically like it's like national level governance versus state level governance, I guess. So with the Articles of Confederation, the division of power, it's mostly granted to the state level governance, and then there's like no president, no ability to tax. They had to ask the states for money. There was no federal army. The 13 states, they had their own military. There's no controls over commerce between states or anything like that. So they had it set up to where in order to pass laws, you had to have 9 out of 13 votes between the 13 states, or what's called a super majority. But in order to change the Articles of Confederation themselves, they actually had to have all 13. 13 out of 13 had to all vote in order to be able to, I guess, under the Articles of Confederation legally to be able to change it. So basically, what ends up happening is you have the Federalists and then you got the Anti-Federalists. And these movements form because not all state representatives were ever going to agree to ratifying the Constitution or the new Constitution that's yet to be formed. Um, so yeah, the Federalists, they lay out these like persuasive articles and they publish in newspapers and whatnot in order to kind of win over the people for the creation of their proposed new U.S. Constitution. And so there was like responses by the Anti-Federalists. So originally, you have the Articles of Confederation, first Constitution. Uh, you have to have all state representatives in favor. It's not going to happen. Anti-Federalist or the Federalists want the Constitution. They write all these persuasive papers. They're proposing their reasons why this would be beneficial. There's John Jay, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton. They wrote under the name I think it was Publius,
Mhm,
Publius.
mhm.
So they you got the Federalists, then you got the Anti-Feds. They exchanged these public responses, like debating with each other back and forth whether or not the ratification of the Constitution is a good idea. The Federalists make their case. They talk about things like the dangers of factions and their threat to liberty. And both sides, they have great points because, I mean, either one, you read their writings and it's very intelligent and well thought out. But they talk about the benefits of taxation and having a federal army and the different insufficiencies of the current confederation to preserve union. They talk about concerning dangers from foreign forces, the inflexibility of the current articles, and they go on. There's like 85 of them. And so then the Anti-Federalists, they had their responses that they written under the name Cato. And these were like guys like Sam Adams, Patrick Henry, and Thomas
These are
Jefferson.
so they're all writing under the names of Roman orators.
Ooh,
Publius and Cato or Cato were they were Roman orators.
oh, that's interesting. I was gonna ask you about that because I thought,
Statesmen, really. They were statesmen.
yeah, when I saw those names, they seemed interesting. I thought you might know something about them.
Yeah, well, I mean, look around at the architecture. I mean,
Yeah,
it was neo Greco-Roman. You know what I'm saying? Like that it's called like Greek revival or something like that. Um, I mean, all of that stuff is an expression of interiority of the collective. I mean, these were people that had reached, but they had, a lot of them had really the statesmen, people that represented uh the people. They all had classical educations for the most part. All the Roman orators, Virgil, Plato, regardless of whether or not who they liked, who they didn't like, they're all part of their education. They knew these people the way we know fucking, I don't know, bands or reality TV stars. So we really
yeah.
traded in quite a bit, So
Imagine if we just had a debate thing the other week with Trump and Biden. We had
yeah,
a
I don't know what that
dude
was.
with Alzheimer's talking to an egomaniac, and they were arguing about golf and whatever else. I don't know. It's just a joke though. But imagine if you actually had people that discussed ideas in the ways that they did in this time with these long thought out debates that were actually impactful and meaningful instead of just some fucking entertainment show. You
Well,
know what I mean?
what's interesting to me, right? I watched this thing, and this is I kind of already knew this because I had been on the inside of this industry to a degree. I love Rick Beato. I don't know if you know who he is,
Mm-mm.
but he's this incredible, like, just he can play any genre, any musical style, but he's an extremely technical, well-versed guitar player, and he runs a YouTube channel. He played for years. He was, successful gigging musician in the studio, touring, playing gigs, but never famous because he didn't play the game. So now he kind of took it into his own hands. He's got a YouTube called Rick Beato, and he does all sorts of shit. I mean, he talks to Sting, he talks to Pat Metheny, talks to Metallica. And he does all these videos that have hundreds of thousands and millions of views, and he's become very successful doing it his own way because he is talented and he is brilliant in his own way. But trying to fight his way up the corrupt fucking power structure, he just he wasn't as they say, he wasn't a team player. But anyway, so one of the things he's talking about in a recent interview where he talks about the corruption of the music industry is how, I mean, let's face it, you talk any industry is dependent upon its banks, its lenders. That's all a record label is. It's a bank that specializes in lending to, i.e. fucking musicians. Okay, so he talks about that. He talks about the culture of the music scene, um, and all that stuff. So eventually, right, all the radio stations got sort of bought up after Clinton signed the I think
Mm.
the Radio Act or something, or the
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
right. So essentially, he allowed a monopoly to happen, or the beginnings of one, and with legislation, and essentially, I mean, whether people can come back and think, no, no sources, but that's what effectively fucking happened. This is the problem with people. I don't know if it's autism. I have no idea what the fuck it is. I have no clue, but I can't understand it, and it makes me very frustrated. Nobody gives a fuck what the paper says. It's about what happened. This thing happened, and then this other thing happened. And so I see the causality. I don't need to talk about, what your depressed, you know, uh alcoholic fucking poli sci teacher told you at the community college. I don't give a shit what he has to say. Because I have two eyes and I have two ears and I have a fucking brain in my head. So it's like you have one too. You've got it. You got to use it. Instead of constantly outsourcing the locus of authority to other fucking people. For God's sake, do not divorce your experience of life from the evidence of your ears and eyes. I know there's a big campaign in postmodernism that's telling you, oh, the senses can't be trusted. Well, neither can those assholes who are telling you that.
Yeah.
So, what's the best, what's your best option? So use judgment. There are methods in place. There are ways to learn how to think, right? And the founding fathers were trained in them. The seven liberal arts, libera, free. They make you free. That's why they were called liberal, not because they're about spending a lot of money and giving everybody free food. Libera, they make you free because they taught you how to think. We don't teach that. They took that out of the core curriculum of schools. Kids are not learning how. I didn't learn how to fucking do that. I got to read the trivium and the quadrivium as a 33-year-old. So it's and re-educate myself and all this stuff. But you got to do it because that's what matters. But anyway, so he's talking about how all these radio stations got essentially bought up and they had a director of programming. So one guy was in charge of saying what was going to be on like hundreds of radio stations. And go check out his videos. Go check it out. How greed or how corruption ruined rock and roll or the music industry or something like that, and get the facts from him. But to paraphrase, somebody walks into a station and says, "I think we should play this because it's this is cool, this is good, this is new." And the guy who's programming the radio station says, no, 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 no. People don't tell us what's cool. We tell people what's cool. And so that is effectively, that is what happened in every sector of American life, every sector of American economy. It stopped being, demand and supply. It stopped being what the people want
Yeah.
because the people allowed themselves to be told. The people stopped doing we've become divorced from the essentiality of humanity, which is contained for all time in the philosophical, intellectual, and spiritual traditions of the past. And we're now being told fucking Disney buys Star Wars and they have Yoda say, forget the past, burn it if you have to. They said that in this I forget which of the new Star Wars. I mean, millions of people, impressionable young people, going in there. First of all, when you get into a movie, you go into a complete alpha state. You know what I'm saying? Right? I mean, if you were to watch somebody watching a movie, there's them, their little fat ass scarfing down popcorn, and then 20 yards away is a massive screen. There's no way that you're thinking to yourself, there's no way that this person is like so enmeshed, engulfed in what's going on that screen that when something jumps out, they jump. When a character they love dies, they cry. When something terrible happens, oh, they all scream and everybody, visceral reactions happening because of what happens to your fucking brain the minute you sit in that chair and look at that screen. It's way more than entertainment. And the same concept applies, right? People don't tell us what's cool. We tell people what's cool. Well, we used to have this saying that art imitates life, but now life imitates art. And so you sit people in a fucking chair and play this thing on the screen, this quasi, neo-philosophical thing. You're telling people, forget the past, burn it if you have to. And look at what's happening. Look at what's happening. And we're being severed. We're being cut off from our history, from these intellectual, spiritual, humanist traditions. We're being, forget guns. Forget guns. I have guns, and you're gonna have to kill me to take them away from me. But forget them for the time being. We don't have any way of intellectually or spiritually defending ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So,
think sorry, keep going.
so is that all gloom and doom, or
Uh yeah. I don't know, it's truth. But yeah, and it's funny, I think that we've talked about this point before with the institution of Freemasonry by virtue of what it stands for and the things like the trivium, the quadrivium, like developing a virtuous nature and how that's ironically like such a popular focal point for whatever this thing is that's trying to suppress the development of the ideals that lead to what would be considered a philosopher king. These things that are sustainable um, across long periods of time that help develop the individual to a state where they are able to rule themselves. These are the things that are being labeled as evil in some ironic, insane way. Um, and so it's just, yeah, that's interesting to me. What I was going to ask you is Thomas Jefferson, was he a Mason or
I don't think so.
uh,
I don't
who
know
all?
though. I could look it up. I know there were a bunch of founding fathers that you know what the thing is like that was drilled into my fucking head so much like when I was younger like interested in Dan Brown and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Um and like it was like History Channel kind of
Mm,
esotericism. So I kind of rejected because I don't need an exemplar to be a good person. I don't need to
right.
be pushed. I don't, nobody needs to tell me like, oh, but Tom, George Washington, he never lied. He cut down the cherry tree. He didn't lie about it. He became a Mason, president of the country. Great. That's great. Um,
Yeah.
that's not going to necessarily motivate me to be a better person. What's going to motivate me to be a better person is, you know, the thing that has been reaching out to me my whole life, calling to me. and that I have essentially been trying to make contact with wants me to do that.
Mm.
I have no problem setting my will in abeyance to that higher power, right? I mean, and if God asks you to serve your fellow man, you got to do it, whether you like them or not.
Yeah.
But you're gonna be able to help people a lot more if you love them. Loving people doesn't mean you got to like them,
Hmm.
but if you love people, you'll be able to help them in ways that are much more profound and spiritual than superficial. Um, but it's I don't know. It's a little controversial, but the longer I am in masonry, I see like this kind of superficiality towards, not in everybody, of course not. So is exceptions, but I do see this superficiality toward the acquisition of living or of the virtues and living a moral and upright life. I see a lot of really, really great examples. I don't see a lot of bad examples. But at the same time, there's something so essential, so spiritual that's not there yet. It's not there. It's almost like doing the moral thing without full illumination,
Mm.
without all the light. And so what happens is you only work at this very low level, which is good. That's good enough, right? Because so much of everything around us nowadays is completely fucking corrosive. So they're doing a great job. But there's something more in masonry that will push us if we follow it and we allow that to happen. And I'd like to see more of that. And I think that a lot of the young people coming into Freemasonry want that. That is the answer they're searching for. It might not be the answer they want, once they get it, but that is essentially, the thing that they're looking for. That is in and of its essence what it is. It's a spiritual truth. It's a spiritual goodness that is, you know, part of not only the raison d'etre, but it's the sine qua non, right? The reason for being and the thing that you cannot do without. You can't do Freemasonry without it. I mean, you can, but to me, it's not really Freemasonry in its fullest expression. And you get
Mm.
all these guys that say, well, like, well, I've been a Freemason for 80 years and I never heard of that before. Well, what about Wilmshurst? What about Robert Hewitt Brown? They can just go fuck themselves. All the Manly Palmer Hall, all these incredible esoteric Masons giving you like this wealth of information. Even Alfred Pike, wealth of spiritual information. And you're the one who chose to read fucking, how to tie your apron. 101. Nobody hid those books from you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, the first time I actually came across a Freemason, it was actually in my freshman year and in my history class. The book, it had like the different presidents, and it was like Republican, Democrat, and then like some of them had like parentheses Freemason. And I was like, what's a Freemason? But so it must have been a decent history book, or I had a page in it that was decent. But that kind of got me curious, and I just thought it was funny and ironic because we were talking about that stuff. But
yeah, I
yeah.
mean, it's definitely a point of interest. The thing is, it's like, again, you get this dualistic attitude towards everything where it's like, yeah, you've got a bunch of presidents that did really great. They did great things. They were leaders. They were great Americans. They're Freemasons. And on the other hand, you get the people who are, sitting alone in their fucking bedroom at 4 o'clock in the morning on 4chan. And those people, because they've done nothing with their lives, want to say, well, it's a conspiracy. Freemasons are part of a global conspiracy. And it's actually a bad thing. Meantime, you got the one guy over here saying Freemasons are presidents. And then you got the other guy saying Freemasons are presidents. They're saying the same thing,
Yeah.
but they're interpreting it completely fucking differently. So it's like, something has really gone wrong. Um, and it boils down to this idea of unity. I'm gonna circle back right now. I'm gonna tie everything that I've said for the last 5 minutes together. I think there's a reason that a lot of Freemasons and a lot of people in general don't go the whole 9 yards. I think that there's a reason. And that reason is the whole reason for this talk, because this is what I wanted to get to. The idea is unity. Freemasons talk a lot about unity, how we're, a band of brothers and friends, and who can best work and best agree, among whom no contention should exist, except that noble contention, or rather emulation, right? But in our spiritual traditions in the West, and in some Masonic, I would say they're considered now, outmoded, perhaps irregular, dead Masonic rites, like the Elu Cohens, things of that nature. Memphis Mizraim, ruffle a lot of feathers saying those words. But they talk about the spiritual unity, right? They talk about it, but they talk about it in metaphysical terms. Talk about really Adam, the Adamic consciousness of humanity, being when humans were one consciousness, and then like the fall being like a great mirror in which that pristine reflective surface was smashed into millions, billions of tiny little individual pieces, all from the same mirror. So with that said, there's no reason why spirituality has to happen in communities traditionally, because we don't go, we don't, get to transcend until everybody transcends. It's an all for one type of thing. And so what's happening is the overarching consciousness, the archetypal consciousness, the collective consciousness, as Jung would put it, is being conditioned. Remember what I said about conditioning the soul? The collective consciousness is being conditioned. And when it's affected at that deep of a level, or I would say at that diffuse of a volume, right? Mass media allows it for billions of people to be programmed, billions of people to be conditioned, influenced. When it's happening at that level, it's happening to all of us. Even if I never pick up a phone, even if I never turn on a TV or open a laptop, I will probably be better off than my brothers and sisters who have, but I will still be subject to certain impediments, because it's basically like if I'm tied to a rock that's rolling downhill, no matter how powerful, no matter how valiant, no matter how strategic my fight against that momentum is, I'm going to get pulled with it. And that's exactly what's happening. There's a critical mass of people that have allowed the appetitive and spirited parts of themselves to completely fuck and dominate the rational part of themselves. And that is happening on such a large scale sort of, phenomenon that even those of us that are trying our hardest are feeling that downward tug, that downward pull, because ultimately we're all one. We're all one. And that's what I wanted to get across that day that I was, July 4th, when I said, it's like, what about unity? Right? What about unity? Because here's the whole thing. What's entirely fucked up is that, as you know, we're talking about how the founding fathers, they didn't want standing armies. They didn't want the government, the country in debt, right? Usury has been outlawed in every major civilization since recorded history. They fought that. They fought, for all of you who don't know what usury is, it's lending money at interest, because the lender, or the person in debt, is the lender's slave. Okay? And You never want to be put in that situation. It's normalized now. Meantime, in ancient fucking Rome, they were kicking people out that were doing that. Okay. So the presidents fought a very hard battle early on. Look at Andrew Jackson. He fought the banks tooth and fucking nail and won. He did what was best for the American people. And you know what they do now? Google and all those, those fucking massive megacorps, they vilify him. They talk
Yeah.
about what a piece of shit he was.
Well,
You
one of
know,
the
sorry.
I was just gonna say one of the things that you are able to do very well and that I aspire to do, because people will find any negative aspects of any of these personalities, these founding fathers or early Freemasons, and they'll point out particular flaws in their character, or their personalities or things they did wrong, and they'll latch on and they'll just kind of dismiss everything out. But anyway, what I was getting
Yeah,
to is one of the,
that's because they're fucking children.
yeah, basically. But not throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
We're all
Which
human. I
is
mean, it's like, let me ask them a question. Let's go back to your fucking MySpace profile 10 or 8 years ago. Let's see how much
oh
you're
my God.
proud of. Let's see how much you're proud of. And then
Yeah.
you'll really get the sense like, wow, things change in a short period of time. And I'm not the fucking great person I thought I was, right? So judge not, lest ye be judged.
Mm,
It's an
yeah.
easy target. We're all human beings. You're never going to be able to point to a person who's perfect. So yeah, it's the easy way to take somebody out, but they've been trained to do that. They've been trained to look for every human being has an Achilles heel. Every one of us has a fucking weak knee. And they've been trained. They've been trained when there's a dog whistle blowing, something that they don't fucking like. They've been trained to find that and to use it to take them out. That's
Yeah.
how fucking sick these people are.
And it seems like it's crazy when you look back at the back and forth between the the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. I mean, because the Federalist papers have been pretty popular for a while, but the Anti-Federalist papers haven't. Um, and I mean, a lot of what they have said, it's kind of manifesting right now. A lot of the things they worried about, like, so they gave their arguments about things like the dangers of centralized authority and power, like, and the powers of taxation, and they talk about, like, they don't trust that the individuals are going to be able to keep this thing um, pure without it expanding and growing and usurping all of the rights of people. They were worried that their rights were eventually going to get taken away, and um, they were, I don't know, the Federalists had like a lot of really good positions and they write really eloquently. The Anti-Federalists had great positions and responses. The thing that I think kind of saved it was because the Anti-Federalists were interested in amending the Articles of Confederation, but they didn't want to throw it out entirely for a whole new constitution. But so eventually, once the Constitution, won out and everything, I think it was 1789. Um, but in the process, in the back and forth exchange, they ended up basically instigating the Bill of Rights to sort of rectify some of the concerns that, like, the Anti-Federalists had, because they were wanting to protect the rights of the people because they weren't putting those in the new original intended version of the uh, new Constitution. So I think it's awesome to look at this back and forth dialogue over this long period of time that's like really well thought out, and see how people can create something with sort of a compromise. Um, but yeah, I don't know, like they talk about you read the guys like Madison, and he's super eloquent, and you're like, oh, okay, I can really see what you're saying there. But then, you read some of Thomas Jefferson's points in response to things that he said, and you're like, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense to me too. So I don't know,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
fascinating.
and the thing is that people will say, well, none of that shit matters because they were all fucking slave owners,
Right.
And the thing is, like, I'm only like half kidding about this, but I'm sure one day is going to come where they're going to look back at people like me and, fucking say like he was a speciesist because he owned a fucking dog. And well, think of it. No, just give me a second to explain my point. Maybe there's truth to that. Maybe there's truth to that. Maybe there's some truth, a little bit of truth to the fact that like this thing is its own fucking being, and if I let it do its thing, it could function without me. It could function at a higher level. It could experience freedom. Who knows? But the whole fucking point is that whether it's right or whether it's wrong, I am subject to the norms of my time. Whether it's right or whether it's wrong, I am subject to the norms of my time. This was such an institutionalized fucking thing for so many years. Scotsmen, Irishmen were slaves in America. They were sent here by Oliver Cromwell.
Mm-hmm.
He was basically giving sending. I mean, America. Let's face it, America was a penal colony. We don't like to talk about it. We'd like to say that, oh, that was Australia, but America was a fucking penal colony. They sent prisoners here. They sent slaves here. They sent people who you can either die, be in prison for life, or be exiled to the New World. And slavery was a huge thing. It's been a huge thing for as long as time, for as long as the historical record, East and West. But here's the thing that people don't realize. Forget everything I just said. These men were fighting tooth and fucking nail to get rid of slavery. 1787, the Northwest Ordinance declaring, okay, here's the rules of government for the territory northwest of Ohio. No slaves. No indentured or forced servitude. I believe it's in 1807. Thomas Jefferson, President Thomas Jefferson. Everybody likes to say, oh, he was a slave owner. First of all, he freed a few of his slaves, and he let a bunch of them go. They fled, and he refused pursuit.
Which in the time and the context was pretty damn old.
That aside, President Thomas Jefferson in or around 1807 signed the Prohibition Act against the slave trade. He ended the North Atlantic slave trade. Thomas Jefferson ended the ability to buy and import slaves into this country. And he is the reason the northern fucking abolitionist states existed. Because he forbade them. He made a fucking law saying you cannot buy, sell, or import slaves into this fucking country anymore. And so then, of course, you've got all the fucking hoity-toities up in New York and all those other, fairyland up there. And they're basically saying like, oh, let them go. It's like, motherfucker, the only reason you don't have slaves is because this guy told you couldn't have them anymore. And it's this whole, this fucking morality play, but nobody reads primary sources. Nobody looks at the history. They see some fucking dude who's just as impassioned as I am, his big fat face on their fucking Instagram screen, and he's screaming about how Thomas Jefferson was a fucking racist, and they're loving it. Why? Because the appetitive and the spirited are ruling over their logisticon. They're rational. Mm-hmm. They want to hear the guy yelling. That's why I do it. I yell because people will listen to me when I act like an animal, but I'm hiding the medicine in the applesauce for you assholes. I actually know what the fuck I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So it's a totally different thing. And so before people go off on a tirade about how, nothing that they could have done is justified, look at the stupid shit you've done and the things that you may not even be fucking aware of. You're going to be vilified for the rest of history. Meantime, these guys were aware of it. Thomas Jefferson wrote explicitly, he called slavery a fucking blight. He called it a disease. He called it like a black mark on the history of humanity. Okay. And there's things that you're doing right now, people are doing right now. We don't even have any idea. This guy actually got his ass into a position of power where he changed things. He didn't go on, he didn't do his equivalent of Instagram memeing and write on the town crier board, he actually did it. he worked for it. And this is the same guy that these people are using, particularly the academic sectors. These fucking Marxist lunatics are training people to vilify this man. This is one of the greatest men who ever lived in this country.
Yeah. What do you see as things that you can point to of people attacking the wrong systems, and what do you feel like the root core reasoning behind that is, or what's leading to it? Like, what is this force that's driving, like you had mentioned, how we've kind of been fooled into devouring our own body rather than the body of the parasite that is devouring us. Maybe
Right.
you could elaborate on that, and like what how would is there like a force behind this that you can
Well, it
describe?
it goes back to kind of what I was saying, which I'm glad you mentioned it, as we circle back to the banks. 1913, you know, the Federal Reserve Bank gets that whole system gets signed into to policy. How did the government 1913, right? So the government had been in existence and prosperous for well over 100 years at that point. Why at 1913 did we decide that we had to introduce an income tax? Well, because bankers were behind the Fed, right? Nothing federal about the Federal Reserve. It's as federal as Federal Express. There's nothing. It's a privately owned
Private,
fucking
yeah.
bank that prints fiat money out of thin air, backed by nothing. I think it was Nixon who took us off the gold standard. The money's backed by nothing. It exists because fiat, right? Fiat means let it be. Let it be so. It has value because we say it has value. And these I mean, you want to talk about people from fucking hell. Still to this day, you know, the banking system attracts these kinds of fucking, human spiders, just but at this point, the entirety of the system of government was able to be hijacked because now, what did I say earlier, right? The borrower is slave to the lender. And when a country borrows money from a privately owned, a private lender, we become slaves.
Yeah.
And how do people prosper off of slaves? From their work. So how did we make money? How are we so fucking prosperous before the income tax? Well, tariffs. I believe it was Andrew Jackson. He levied tariffs at 42% of.
What's a tariff? I don't know.
So a tariff is a tax on imported goods.
Oh, okay.
So you want to buy from Britain? You want to buy from Spain? You want to buy from Italy? Cool. We'll buy your shit, but it's going to cost you, it's going to cost 42%. You're going to get a 42% tax. So why would we do that, right? We're globalists. We like globalism. We want to connect the fucking world. Well, because what it allowed us to do is, as a fledgling country, pioneer industry. We astounded the fucking world, particularly France and Spain, with the amount of, we were able to raise what is today tens of billions of dollars from American steel and internal industry. American industry was the fucking standard because we levied tariffs. We made our money off of imported goods and we bought and sold our own. And we had an incredible industry. Bankers don't like that, right? Because you're basically saying they're the ones, bankers are the ones who, they're the roots. They're the roots that are being fed by all the corporations. corporations and the corporate money is like rain, and it just showers on these roots like a plant, and the dirt soaks it up, and the roots grow deep and they grow strong. And they're the fixed thing. They're the thing that benefits from everything. The root of the plant constantly consuming and rooting deeper, establishing itself. Those are the banks in terms of corporate money. And so, yeah, if these you know you know these corporate businesses, let's say these proto corporate, they're not corporate the way we would think of corporate, but these global industries that the bankers are benefiting off of, they don't want to pay 42% to import fucking goods. So what we're going to do is we're going to take hold of your financial system, right? I forget which Rothschild said it, but give me control of a nation's money, and I don't care who makes the laws.
Yeah.
They got control of our money, and the borrower became slave to the lender. And again, how do slave owners profit off of slaves? By their labor. So income tax. And now that allowed them over time to create a corporate state. That's essentially fascism. People don't know what fucking fascism is. There's kind of a new definition to it. But formerly, Benito Mussolini said this. Fascism is the merger of corporate and state power. So you've got all these fucking liberal retards talking and calling people fascists. And meantime, it's like, no, 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 no. You learned that word from the wrong motherfucker. you know, you learned that word from the wrong fucking people. The merger of state and corporate power is America. We've been fascist for 50 years, since the end of World War II. All this shit came to a head. Really, it started with the hijacking of our financial system in 1913 with the Federal Reserve. But so what's happening now is those interests, those bankers, those, global financiers, they've had us they've lulled us into a state of willed slavery through ignorance, debt slavery. We're debt slaves. We love it. You're telling me, oh, look, I get a credit card. The day I'm graduating from college, somebody's coming around. He got asked by, I don't know, Capital One, hey, we'll give you a certain amount of bucks. You'll get credit for your econ class, uh, 101. You'll get credit if you hand out these cards. They give you a box of t-shirts or something. Here, you get a t-shirt, get a credit card set up, do that. You're fucking 19 years old. You're like, oh, look, free money.
Yeah.
Bam, you're in fucking debt. You're in debt. They got you off the hook as a fucking guppy. They got you on the line. So,
Yeah.
and everybody, you look around, it's like there's very few parents that are even good role models. You don't lease a fucking car. You don't buy a new car. You don't go into debt. If you don't have the fucking cash, you don't buy it. Yeah. And, if that means that you don't have the same amount of shit as everybody else, who fucking cares, man? These people are saddled with debt. They're going to die slaves. They're going to fucking die a slave, you
Yeah.
know? And so that was what, if you watched it, our society moved away from the life of the mind, from the life of philosophy, from the life of intellect, and it changed. The core curriculum changed. And since everything around us was changing, we were made to feel, and very subtly, right? It took generations for this stuff to gradually change. We were made to feel like, oh, it's natural, it's organic. This stuff is outmoded. Nobody seems to care anymore. Why should I? And
It's-
then here we are.
yeah. And you mentioned the banking institutions and all that. I think another big one is the media. Um, the people that had like kind of essentially taken over the media corporations, and I think it was even the one of the founders of the Federal Reserve that was also a newspaper publisher or something like that. So, you
Got
have
it.
these people that are doing their thing and then they're able to influence the public at the same time through publication companies. They're usurping more money, taking more money, building up their institutions more and more. It's just growing, it's growing. They eventually consolidate throughout time. Uh, I don't know how many, at least the news stations at one point were like consolidated into like five major parent corporation companies or something like that. Um, but I think that's another thing that everybody's becoming, well, not everybody, but many people are becoming aware of is just the uh scam of the
Yeah,
media because it's
yeah,
so
yes,
diluted.
yes, but the issue is they're pointing to your media, not their media. My media is fine. You know, I
Yeah.
get my media from somebody that I saw on Joe Rogan, or I get my media from this underground subculture, or I get my media from C-SPAN, CNN. I get mine from Fox. Let me tell you something. Do not. That's the whole problem. So you talked about how the newspapers, right? That was the media, newspapers.
Mhm.
You'd pick it up in the morning. You'd know what was going on in every corner of the fucking world in 10 minutes. Okay,
Or you thought you did because you
right.
thought that there was an authoritative source that was telling you what was really going on and you trusted it.
That's my point. My point is that these people garnered our trust. We gave them our trust.
Yeah.
The whole idea of the Constitution is do not trust anyone. Trust God.
Hmm.
Trust God and your gun. That's who you fucking trust. Okay, that's the whole idea of the Constitution. The founding father, the founding principle of this fucking country is, you know, you can't give people that you can't really give groups of people, really. You can't give groups of people that much trust. And you can't give a, a single person or small groups of people in massive positions of power any trust.
Yeah.
Okay. And so my advice to you, whomever is listening, do not disavow any fucking voice that comes through or was able to develop via any form of media, right? There is so much already here for you. There's a world that you don't even know exists that is interpenetrated with our world, like some kind of spooky astral fucking blueprint. It's here, but we can't see it. But it's the reason it's called the fucking past. It's called the past. That spooky astral undergarment, that's underneath and literally the reason everything is not the reason everything is bad. The reason everything is. It's the past. There's a record there. Go and read it. You can't understand it. Get fucking smarter. You do not want to be this type of person. You do not want to be a modern fucking person. Trust me. Trust me. If anything, you want to be the new type of modern person that reaches backwards to bring ancient wisdom into the future.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not telling you to go live in the fucking woods or wear a powdered wig and stop washing your ass. You know, embrace the forms of modernity that are not inherently detrimental. Okay. And there's a lot of those. How do you find out what they are? Reach back into the past. There is a resonance there. I mean, your being, your soul, you'll find it somewhere, will ring like a bell because these people were so in touch with the humanity that we're no longer in touch with. We feel it. It aches in us. It's one of the reasons why people are fucking rabid and they want to destroy everything. It's not just this radical sense of fucking justice or pain. It's because I'm a fucking human and I don't know how to be one anymore. I don't know what that means. I know how to buy things. I know how to wear things. I know how to play a part. I know how to fucking lay in my bed like a goddamn lump and binge watch fucking blue light. You know, that's not fucking, that's degrading. It's fucking degrading. It's anti-human. This entire fucking agenda is anti-human. Everything that's going on right now, for the most part, is fucking anti-human. But like you say, we're now attacking the founding fathers. We're now attacking the spirit of philosophy, intellect, self-preservation. That's
Mm.
what that, don't trust groups of people. Don't trust them with your well-being.
Yeah.
That's what
I
it's.
th
Don't trust them with your West well. That's a righteous and intelligent sense of self-preservation. You cannot trust groups of people, but we're now being taught to dismantle that.
yeah,
We're
and I
now
think
being taught. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
oh no, I'm sorry. I think that's like part of what's genius about the whole "in God we trust," the whole emphasis on God-given rights. And to me, that's like the key component in any successful formula. Like it has to be uh above any president or above any person that you're looking out to in the world. It has to be that. And I know people have different conceptions about how they conceive of God, a higher power, the source that is the animate spark that lends to our conscious awareness. But that's something that is not just another individual human that you're looking to dictate and create ideas about how your life should be lived.
Yeah.
Because if it that's the way, that's the only way I could see anything like a system of governance, if there has to be one, working. Um, and it can't be, I don't know if it's ever gonna be something that can be successful. What do you think about that? Do
Well,
you, I
well,
mean,
nothing is ever going to be successful for on a long enough scale of time. Nothing will be successful. It will be something will be successful in changing the regime and bringing people to a relative modicum of safety and comfort. We ain't looking at a fucking golden age anytime soon, buddy. That's the dichotomy of material reality. There is always going to be a dipole, and the dipole creates a spectrum upon which we will continuously oscillate.
hmm,
And the only way to escape that oscillation is to remove oneself from the horizontal axis.
hmm, read the
Not find
fulcrum.
not find no, but here's the thing. You can't find the fulcrum on
Ooh.
on a horizontal axis that is constantly in flux, that is constantly in volley. That's the whole fucking reason. Like this everyone's totally confused
So
like
then,
by a two-party system. Here's what you do, right? We know the verbiage:
mhm,
two opposing forces and one which unites them eternally. What does that remind you of? A triangle. You have to triangulate, which means you do not deny or try to resolve or dissolve the two opposing forces and the spectrum of generation between them, that interaction. You simply ascend above them and create a third point, drawing those forces upward. In other words, you become the mediator. You
hmm,
have to mediate via triangulation, because to remain on the horizontal axis is to continually abide by the rules and assumed premises of the
mhm,
argument. This is in a these the premise of the argument could be faulty. So you
hmm,
you don't want to stay there. You will not be able to get objectivity. You'll need to kind of like you won't be able to find where the center is really for very long. You may think you're on the center, but maybe you're just left of it or you're just right of it. You have no fucking clue. So you have to triangulate. How that's done is the subject of another podcast. But
uh,
I think anybody with any kind of fucking discernment or spiritual development can figure that out.
hmm,
And it's about perspective. It's about perspective shift. It's about not needing to get rid of one in favor of the other or get rid of the polarities in favor of the central point. It's about maintaining the triangle, right? Pythagoras said that. You
yeah.
need, it's the triad of life if you're a golden dawner,
That's
right?
interesting. I'll have to contemplate on it. When I think about it, I think about like trying to force two sides of a magnet together, but they're not wanting to go together. If I'm trying to, I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking about it wrong.
Well, you're right there because there's this kind of repulsion, which is a kind of action, but there's also attraction there. It's basically there is this kind of magnetic, oscillation, and the thing is, you've got to get out of it because if you're stuck in the middle of the field, you're really not going to be able to do anything. Great, you're polarized there, but you have no method of drawing them in because what happens is, let's say I'm in the middle. And
Hmm.
I end up drawing one side closer to me. I've just created another dipole, and there's a different center.
Mm.
There's just a different center. It's constantly a fractal dipole. So it's not going to not exist. That's the
Yeah.
whole problem with these fucking non-dual idiots is that they're like, nothing is real, nothing I do matters. I'll go fuck your wife, like, or I'll just not do anything for the rest of my life. I'll sit around with the trees. And then quietism is basically them saying, you guys do your thing, have fun, which is great, right? But I'm sure they're living a life of relative calm, but we live in a fucking world with 8 billion people and things are going wrong. So now's not the time to say, peace, guys, I'm going to the dugout. Now's the time to say, I'm going to come in and be the fucking pinch hitter. I've got to contribute to the effort. I've got to do something. There's a moral stance here. There truly is one. Finally, there's a moral stance. And not only that, but the ball is in play. Things can still happen. We're not hopeless.
Yeah.
We're never hopeless, but things can still happen. But just to circle back and finish the point that you said, because I do think that that's a really good analogy, is that when we attack, right? I wrote something recently. I've got a new Substack. It's called Ike Baker from the Sunroom, because I do most of my writing out here now in the sunroom. Short 3 5-minute reads, but I wrote something recently that said, I refuse to completely burn down, or I refuse to completely destroy that which it is not my expertise to build. So how the fuck do I know, first of all, how to dismantle it, why it should be dismantled? Just because I'm fucking angry at it doesn't mean I got to take the goddamn thing apart. I didn't build it. I don't know how to fucking build it. Just because I don't know how to use it, I'm like a goddamn monkey throwing feces. It doesn't mean the thing deserves to be broken, you know? And then what are you going to do? That makes you a fucking destroyer, pal. What good are
Mm.
you? You don't know how to build anything. Okay, well, we'll get the next guy in to come and build it. You never want to trust somebody who's too eager to rebuild something. And I'll tell you why. Because it's likely that they're going to rebuild it according to their own standards, their own little fucking fantasy, owing no allegiance, or uh, giving no credence to anything higher than their own fucking whimsy, their own predilections, their own biases. So we're now attacking the structure of our fucking country, the structure of our world. And what that's doing is, we, like you say, like an autoimmune disease, we are attacking our own body, and we are not attacking the parasitic fucking organizations and people. I hesitate to call them human beings, but the people that hijacked our government and brought this sickness to us. They
Yeah.
are the ones who should be going to public execution. We should not be trying to dismantle each other. We should not be trying to vilify and completely eradicate the foundation of this fucking country, because we don't know how to do anything. We don't know how to do anything. We have no fucking clue. You
Yeah.
got all these idiots out there talking about fucking, okay, yeah, but if we could all be farmers. Do you know how hard it is to farm? Do you have any fucking idea how long it takes to learn how to grow fucking food? And then let's just say your first 2 years are bunk. You got no fucking food, pal. What are you going to do? What, you're going to go to your neighbor and you're going to have to give him a hand job or something like that, or fucking wash his food, wash his plates or something like that. You need to survive. You need to survive. Don't tell me that these fucking people, these Walmart motherfuckers, know how to survive.
Mhm.
They don't. They have no clue. There's zero self-sufficiency. There's zero self-sufficiency. I don't care if you've been homesteading since COVID. Wow, congratulations. Like when the shit hits the fan and you have to fucking lean on yourself. And you're never fully leaning on yourself. Your number one prep is your community. When you have to lean on your community, can you trust them? Can you provide anything for them? Can you do anything? That's what it all boils down to. Can you contribute to the group effort? Don't kid yourself. Don't kid yourself. So do not be so quick to completely destroy that which it is not your expertise to build. And that's the whole thing. Everybody thinks that they're a fucking master because they can go on Google and learn about this shit. But I think that one of the last things that I really want to say is we're going forward through time, but we're going backwards in human history. Where, like I said in the beginning, we are becoming more and more molded into, we're going back into, tribalism, except now it's socio-political tribalism. We're going back to feudalism, except now it's neoclassicist or classist feudalism. We're going back to fucking paganism. We're going back to being, except now it's like this activist paganism, activism sort of bullshit. We're going back to being uneducated, but it's a kind of uneducated that while all information exists perpetually at our fingertips, we're now being poisoned by things like fake news, an overwhelm of information, AI. So our information base is being poisoned the way that they would drop a little bit of poison into a well, kill a fucking village. So we've really got to look at what's going on here. And again, I say to you, disavow any voice that came to prominence through the media. Go back. Don't even listen to me. I hope that I can be somebody that just turns you around, or orients you. The meaning of the term orient, right? What does that mean? East.
East.
I'm just trying to make you face east. Try and face the fucking sun instead of being the inheritor of a dying world and only looking to the west, the place of death, the place of darkness. That's the aesthetic we love now. One of the things, obviously, that I hate is that people have been utterly convinced. They've been utterly fucking brainwashed to believe it's principally because of Christianity and Christian authoritarianism. The one thing that I really am eager to point out is that the idea of social justice comes from Christian organizations. The orphanages, schools, charities, soup kitchens, all started out in this country from Christian organizations. Education, that very model comes from nuns used to run schools, and they would run orphanages, and a lot of times they were the same fucking thing. The spirit of egalitarianism, right? It's like, oh, well, morality is relative. Okay, cool. Then I'll come over and I'll stab your cousin. Well, no, no, no. It's like, well, you don't get to fucking choose which morals are right or wrong, or they exist or they don't exist. It's just my morals. My morals are the correct ones. Because who the fuck? Because their brain has been completely taken over by the mind virus of postmodernism, which is ultimately inherited from an aesthetic. It's an aesthetic. They want to look as sophisticated and as righteous and sound as smart and put together. They want to sound like the adults that they encountered in academia, and the really successful people, because we all know that success is based on behaviorism. You got to fit in. You got to fit into the contemporary paradigm in order to do well in the world. And what did Jiddu Krishnamurti say? It was no measure of or no mark of good health to be profoundly it's not a mark of good health to be well-adjusted in a profoundly sick society, right? So you got all these people kind of just pantomiming what's coming out of the fucking universities, because those people are positing them. So I've been to all of them. I've been to every kind of school. I went to community college. I went to a private college. I went to a state school, and I went to a vocational school. I've been to all of them. I've spent almost 2 decades, at this point in fucking schools. I know what the culture's like. I've been to a lot of them. I left one of them because it was like fucking, I don't know, brown shirts training. It was awful. Stony Brook University, awful. I say I was going for PT. I said, get the fuck out of here. This is a breeding ground for socio-political tribalism. It's not fucking school. It's not a school. So I know what's going on there. And what they're not realizing is that people are now defecting. I had an amazing conversation with Aaron Cheek the other night, and you got to listen to him. The shit that he has to say about what's going on, the abject corruption that's forcing good people out of academia, the rampant egotism, So, uh, but you got to understand, like all the fucking things, all the egalitarianism, the social justice, all comes. These are Christian fucking ideas, whether you like it or not. So,
Yeah, I think it can be overwhelming for a lot of people because if we get into a place where we're feeling like nothing can be trusted, I think people will have this sense of overwhelm where they don't know where to turn to get uh information on reality and like how to approach life in general. And they think everything's a lie. What can I trust? And because they believe everything, and then at some point they get shaken, something comes along, and then they think everything's a lie. And then I think a lot of people are in that place. So then they have this thing where a lot of people will want to latch on to something because they'll just take anything, whatever comes their way, whatever's nearest to them. They have something that that they're reaching for or looking for that they don't know how to explain. So something closest comes along, they latch onto it, and the next thing they know, they're in some movement that's some Antifa group or some fucking you know, I don't know, uh, social justice warrior of some kind, but not in the true sense of the word, just like kind of posing as social justice, but underneath it is like a sense of belonging or a sense of
mm,
community. And I think
that's right.
that it's like this loss of the value of community in general, and people are desperately thirsty for true uh true community because they can't find it in the dominating models and what's available to people with
Well,
what we have, and it has this like sort of unhuman connect. It doesn't connect people at the human level like we once were able to do. I don't
well,
know.
the
It's
thing, the premise of that is flawed is the idea that we are true humans. You know, you want true community, you got to learn to be a true human being. What does that go back to? What we began the conversation with, right? The only way that a human can be considered just or truly human is if the spirited and appetitive, the lower two
mm,
aspects of the tripartite soul, willingly consent to rule by the rational. You want real things in your life, you need to become a real fucking boy. You need to become a real fucking man. You need to become a real woman. Okay? You have to work on yourself. Now, the idea that nothing can be trusted is ridiculous. But you have to learn how to trust yourself. And that doesn't mean to just, all these people talking nowadays, how they've channeled this and their spirit guides that and all this. Most of it, I would say 95, 99% of it is fucking delusion. That's not the kind of trust I'm talking about. Trust but verify, as my boss used to say. You need to work on the parts of yourself that will enable yourself to trust yourself. What did we mention before? Libera, freedom, the liberal, the freeing arts. You want to learn how to think? Go and study the trivium and the quadrivium, the seven liberal arts. They talk about it in Freemasonry. It was the staple of the educated human being. It's what gave education its prestige.
mm,
Education didn't get you a fucking job. Education gave you prestige because it cultured you. And it didn't culture you in a worldly way. It developed your soul. Seven liberal arts are first posited in Plato's Republic, who also gives us the cardinal virtues. Also, a huge part of Freemasonry. But you've got to do it. You've got to walk the path. Learn how to think, and then you can trust yourself. And then from there, you can work towards becoming a true human. Be virtuous. Don't give in to every little fucking, don't concede to the appetitive. It's one of the reasons they put fucking there's an entire group of people pummeling us with free pornography. Every type of food out there now is this gourmet fucking junk food, this comfort food, and these all day long, the programming, the messaging, and you go out there and you know what you're eating? You're eating fucking burger patties in McDonald's that are
Is
77, 75% composed of USDA approved edible plastic.
oh
Okay. So, it's like you need to be able to think before you can trust yourself. You can trust that. You can trust these methods, like I was saying before, the intellectual, spiritual, and philosophical traditions of our past. Trust those, lean on those things to learn and grow and develop your ability to think and speak and to communicate eloquently, succinctly. Get to the heart of the matter with your words instead of trying to sound fucking sophisticated like an asshole. People like me can see right through your horse shit and you look like a fucking jerk off. It's just what it is. You look like you're trying so hard to jump through fucking hoops in order to convince us of something that you don't even believe yourself. You know what I'm saying? So you have go learn how to think, how to speak, how to understand the world around you. Put those perceptual filters in because it's our fucking divine right that we're even able to do that. Fucking chimpanzees can't do that. Dogs can't do that. Human beings can do that. We're
and
not animals.
is there something to not giving into the appetite? Does that involved with developing the will, like being able to um direct your will in a way that's not conforming to uh your appetite, like because we maybe that's like an animal instinctual nature that we have some form of craving or desire of something, but our will is the faculty that determines if we're going to go forward in pursuit of that thing or not. And then so in being able to control our appetite of nature, is that in doing so developing our will?
Yes, but you don't really want to think of it necessarily that way right out of the gate because a lot of it isn't going to look like this David Goggins shit that's out there. You do not, as somebody who can barely fucking control themselves and can barely admit that, you do not want to muscle through it. You do not want to muscle through it. You want to recognize your triggers and then you want to talk to yourself. Play the scenario out in your fucking head. How does it end with the fucking cheesecake? You got fucking diarrhea, you got gas, you feel like an asshole, you're fucking fat and flabby, you're tired, you're sick, you spend too much money. Play it out in your fucking head. Play it out. Okay. And then understand why the fuck do I want this? Why can't I say no? Seek to understand yourself. But the most important thing is that you just tell yourself no. That's it. You don't even have to sit there in the moment, right? Because a lot of it is strategies. A lot of it is coming up with, you don't want to just go out there and be like, oh, fucking French cruller. Hmm.
Yeah.
No, you want to say, okay. I mean, I'm talking now as an addict who's been through recovery and
Yeah.
has I've been through this program. Oh, look, it's cocaine. Oh, look, it's whiskey. Oh, look, it's fucking mushrooms. I had to have a strategy for when I was in that position, what I would do. So develop that strategy. But the most important part of your strategy is how you're going to get out of there and say no. Okay. You don't have to think about it and philosophize and then go talk on Instagram about how hard it is to be doing shadow work. Put your fucking phone down, and focus on what matters. Be a fucking human, and that's the development of the will, but it's not,
Well, because
you've
I'm thinking about like we have habitual patterns that we fall into, and that's sort of like allowing we're kind of, if every day we we have a desire that we want to eat a chocolate cookie and we know it's not good for us, but it tastes so good and we just get in a habit and it's just our daily routine. It's kind of like we're not allowing, I don't know, I don't know if it'd be called the will, like some higher aspect of ourselves that can override and make the right choice.
Well, you've got to. I mean, the whole tradition that spawned the idea of the rational part of the soul. Also, they were big on saying everything in moderation,
Is that
right?
the okay? So then the rational part of the soul was what that would be kind of correspondent to.
Yeah, it would. The thing is that there are multiple wills. It's like
Mm.
that cheesy fucking meme. We contain multitudes for the most part.
Yeah.
So it's like, whose will are we talking about? The appetitive soul has a will. The spirited soul part of the soul has a will. The rational, so you have to specifically develop the rational will, which means that you say, okay, we have these habituated patterns. Well, becoming aware of them, seeing them, that's the first step in making them no longer habituated, right? Because it's like Carl
Yeah,
Carl
yeah,
Carl
yeah.
Gustav Jung said, he's like, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will control your life and you will call it fate. So
Yeah.
you is when you bring these things into consciousness is when it's like, okay, it's no longer a habit, but there's still a pull. But I will tell you, if you keep if it remains habitual, even though it's not, you're now choosing it.
Mm.
And that means you're fucking weak. And it's okay. We're all weak somewhere with something, but you got to admit it. I am fucking weak. And so what you do is just like going to the gym, work on it. You work on it, but you never ever stop. It's like the fire of the alchemist, right? It begins with a gentle heat and gradually gets more and more rapid or more intense. It's the same thing. You want to burn away that level of dross, start with a little bit of heat, and then which is willpower, and then gradually intensify it. You're not going to be able to blast through it. It's going to exhaust you. You're going to fall off the wagon and you're going to be destroyed when that happens. And then you're not
Yeah.
going to want to, you're going to go and probably spiral. So, and you need a support structure, if you can find one. If not, pray, talk to God, and to talk about what you were saying earlier about this idea of you know, needing to defer to God. A lot of people say, well, God's nowhere in the constitutions. Yeah, asshole, but it was somewhere more important in the hearts of the men who wrote the Constitution and ran the fucking country. It's the separation of church and state is fucking satanic. You're not supposed to have them together on paper, but God has to be here.
Mm.
It's got to be here. It's not, we're not talking about a monoculture in terms of religion. We're just talking about faith in a higher fucking power. I mean, you've got vicious fucking atheists, nihilists, solipsists running the country, running the countries.
Yeah.
What do you think about Justin Trudeau? That sack of fucking horse shit with a heartbeat. Are you kidding me?
Gavin
Think that guy?
Newsom.
Yeah, exactly. He's the American version. He's like a fucking used car salesman. Okay, but worse. And those people, their God is them. Gavin Newsom's God is Gavin fucking Newsom. So that can't happen. And so you need some level of religion. Anything unsanctified by God is doomed to fail. In the Golden Dawn, we say, except Adonai keep the house, their labor is lost that built it. Except Adonai watch the city, or except Adonai keep the city, the watchman waketh in vain. In Freemasonry, we say, uh, no man should enter into any great or important undertaking without invoking the blessings of the Most High or invoking the blessings of deity. So no undertaking, not a single one should happen without first invoking the blessings of God and keeping God first, keeping God in your heart. So and that's how you do this too. Because at first, to be honest with you, man, it's not about the will, it's about the why.
Mm.
That's how you break this shit down. I didn't decide one day to get off fucking drugs because I wanted to strengthen my will. I,
Mm.
I decided to get off of drugs because I didn't want to fucking die. That was
Mm.
my why. Okay. So you've got to focus
But
on the
I would
why
be like,
first.
I would say, well, why didn't you want to die? And then you would say, well, because I had the will to live.
Well, technically I did want to die, but the thing is that I
Mm.
felt because you have a death wish when you're doing drugs and doing that kind of shit. But really what happened, it's a long story, but I felt like a fucking coward because I watched my best friend die of a heroin overdose on my 30th birthday. And I watched hundreds of people mourn him and lives irreparably rent in
All the
half,
damage that it did to the, yeah,
all the damage. And I thought to myself, my God, what a fucking selfish piece of shit I've been, because I hate myself. And then immediately just turned to God. I don't know
yeah,
what the fuck I'm doing. I have no idea what I'm doing. I willingly give all of myself to you. I said that one day. I'll never
yeah.
forget where I was or when I said it. I willingly give myself up to you. So please do what you want with me, because I'm fucking done with me. I've destroyed me.
And would you consider, when we talk about becoming human and all of that, uh, would that be kind of going beyond human, like connecting with, saying, allowing not your will, but God's will to act through you?
Exactly. Not unto us, Adonai, but unto thee.
Mm.
That's the whole non nobis. Not unto me not my will be done. Not unto me be the
Okay.
glory.
Yeah.
That's the whole, I mean, that's the secret of the adept.
And I could see why. I understand uh there's like an uncomfortability thing there with, I think for a lot of people it's like, if they don't have a clear conception of their, what it means to connect with God, or their definition of what God is, because I don't know, most of the people that I know that have a struggle with these things have some kind of thing where they have felt hurt in their past by a form of Christianity, usually because we grow up in the Western world, and then they want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, turn the opposite direction, and not trust any of it. So they kind of backtrack. And um, do you see like any other patterns with personalities and their resistance to
Yeah,
these sort of
yeah,
things?
yeah, absolutely. They're fucking children, and it's okay. But I think normally in a pre, merger of state and corporate power America, uh, pre mass media America, people would have just gotten older, spent more time with their elders, spent more time in contemplation, and having to give themselves to the serious duties of raising a family and caring for a home and caring for their loved ones, that eventually fucking grow up. But now you have this little midget, retarded fucking monkey, half toddler on your back, screaming into your ear, "Don't trust that. I don't never grow up." FOMO, fuck you, Hawk Tua, all this fucking horse shit, that's just grafted into our little fucking pea brains. And we're just like, yeah, it's like the Matrix when he's got the thing stuck in his head. It's the fucking media. It's the mass
Yeah.
media. Now, if you don't fucking believe that, if you think you're better than that, you think you're smarter than that, then I laugh in your fucking face, because you either see the programming or you're programmed.
I mean, it's in
That's
the word. It's something that's gone viral. I mean, it's like a virus almost.
exactly, exactly. It is a fucking virus. And that's the way. It's the whole telos behind it, is to get ideas to spread like viruses quickly and diffusely. It's the whole purpose of the mass media, is to get one fucking idea, whether it's right, whether it's wrong, whether it's based in any truth or not, to just completely take over. So that while that's happening, we can go and do this X,
Mm.
Y, and Z. you know, and
Yeah.
and it doesn't even matter. Will it? Hey, fuck it. Put Fauci in jail. Take the Cuomo's and send them to some sort of fucking island. We don't care. We did what we had to do. Y'all are sick. We made a ton of money. I don't fucking care. Why? Because you're fucking viral.
Yeah.
We got you to go viral. You're little fucking cells to us. That's all you are. You're just little cells. And when we send something down the fucking pipe, it like a paper towel, it just wicks through the population. It just wicks like a fucking cotton shirt. Just wicks. Um and that's fucking where we're at, man. And I mean, one of the greatest things is, okay, I've been studying the Cratylus lately. I've been taking a private student through it,
What's
the
that?
EM. So it's one of the Platonic dialogues that's a part of the Iamblichian curriculum of the dialogues. The Neoplatonic theurgic school, he required everybody to go through, or at least suggested, these 12 out of 35 of Plato's dialogues. And with, you know, each one really, I think they more likely, according to Olympiodorus, they're in pairs. So
Mm.
there's like really 6 virtues, according to the dialogues, so that you'd have 2 dialogues per virtue. And the goal is not just to understand the virtue, but to acquire it. And so I'm going through these, and the Cratylus is like, most people kind of roll their eyes. It's very tedious, talks about names and how do we name things. But the most interesting thing is that the Cratylus is almost the key. It's the esoteric key. It's just that most people can't fucking read it.
Mm.
They don't understand what he's saying, but it's the key to the whole fucking system. And one of the things that he shows, the whole thing is it's about names, right? Ostensibly, on the surface level, it's about names. But these 2 guys, Cratylus and Hermogenes, are arguing over, you know, is it Hermogenes is a relativist. He says, yes, names contain truth, but it's whatever truth we want because we just assign names. And then Cratylus says, well, there's an inherent truth to the name, to the particular name. And Socrates kind of, again, triangulates. He says no, no, or he says yes, and. Really, he's saying no. He's disproving their theories, and he's forming that third triangulating point. But one of the first things that he does is he begins to address the type of person that believes in relativism. And he does that by asking Hermogenes what he thinks about people. And Hermogenes, who's a relativist, and says, whatever it's us. It's really Plato's.
How did they define relativism? Is it like
Well,
if I
that's
think
that's our word for it.
okay, because if I
They
think
didn't.
of relativism, I think of well, I I'm comparing X in relation to Y. That's my relative perceptual field of
That's
data.
that. I mean, that's just comparison. That's
Okay.
just comparison and contrasting. Um, Relativism as a philosophical position is, right. We say moral relativism, right? Meaning it can change depending on it. It has no inherent meaning. It's more
So they would say depending on your circumstances, one circumstance might lend to something being moral, while the other circumstance might lend to something being immoral based on
right.
your circumstance because it's relative. Like
Right,
that?
which is complete bullshit.
Oh,
In
interesting.
this case, they'd say, "Hey, fucking this lighter is blue, but Ike thinks it's brown. So for Ike, it's brown. Good, have fun." Socrates says, "Are you fucking dumb?" Basically, he says, if 2 people can't agree on something, then they don't know anything about it. If a group of people cannot agree on a subject or a thing, then they don't truly have any knowledge of it. And he points to this idea of the hidden factor in relativism. There's a hidden underlying subconscious agenda, not an agenda put out there by a group of people. Well, probably now, but back then it was more of a subconscious motivation that if everything means whatever it means to whoever it means, no one can be wiser than anyone else. So it removes the power dynamic and thereby removes my. Socrates puts it this way: the people who are qualified to name things are the nomothetes, the rule makers. They're qualified because we use words as tools. And these nomothetes, these people who are qualified in naming things, are the craftsmen, the craftspeople who know how to use that tool. And a lot of people don't like thinking that they're wrong. It's not even so much that it's like, I don't want to admit that you're right. I don't want to admit that I'm wrong. I don't want to admit that I'm the one who's not qualified. I don't want to admit that I'm not good enough. So I will remove the ability for anyone to be smarter, wiser, or have more skill in anything than me because I fucking say so. That's what relativism is. And
Mm.
Socrates really shows this. He brings it out in Hermogenes, who's really this whiny fucking prick. And he uses it to attack the Protagorean axiom, man is the measure of all things. That's really what he's doing. He's using this whole dialogue, the telos, is to address Protagoras's famous quote, Man is the measure of all things. And he's saying that's relativistic sophistry. It has no place in serious intellectual, philosophical, or spiritual dialogue. Get it out of your fucking head. And here's why. And he triangulates and he ends up pointing to essentialism, the reality of essences. He points to, you want to know why this thing is true? Don't look at the person, don't look at relativism. Don't look at, even the inherent properties of the thing itself. Look to the ideal by which it is informed. So he's pointing, he does it in like 2 sentences at the end of the dialogue, but he basically says, if you want to know anything about truth, you have to get to the ideals, the Platonic ideals, the Platonic realm of forms. And yeah, I agree entirely. I would say it all the time. I'm a Platonic realist living in an Aristotelian nominalist world.
That's really interesting. I want to check that out. So I could wrap my mind around it better, but that's awesome. Maybe you could just say one more time. I want to hear you say the part on what constitutes being a human, and then we could wrap it up.
Well, so according to the Platonic philosophy of the tripartite nature of the soul, there are 3, and soul is psyche. I didn't call it soul, it's just psyche, right? Psyche. That's the word that we translate as soul. But where do we see psyche? In psychology, which is a study of what's going on in here, the interior and the exterior self. And in a lot of ways, this is what the Greeks thought the soul was. That sense of selfhood, that individuality that is above and beyond and survives and animates and should govern the physical body. So they believed that they had 3 aspects, or ways in which it behaved, having been put or bound into a material body, right? The Platonic paradox of soma sema. The body is the tomb of the soul. And so it's stuck here, and it has to learn how to operate this fucking machinery, being pulled constantly by the necessities and predilections of the animal material body, which consistently force it oftentimes to move in a direction which is counter to its nature. Right? The soul is higher. It is effervescent. It is continuous. It is not subject to death. It does not inherit death, and nothing that it imparts has to do with death. It is a part of the deathless, the timeless, the transcendent, yet it is in a body that dies and is subject to all these material changes. Our body is part of this matrix that is constantly in flux, going from birth, growth, apex, decay, death. Okay? That's not the eternity we come from, the changeless, ever living eternity, because now we're subject to time. Time makes it so that things change, right? That's all time is. It's a way for human beings to recognize and talk about and think about change. But in reality, there's just an ever present now. So the soul, having this confounding experience, behaves in different ways. It has different modes of behavior, and the ancient Platonists classified them into 3 types of behavior, or compulsions, really. The bottom 2. So the lowest is the appetitive. It has appetites. It has strong desires, impulses, sex, food, survival. The limbic brain, right? The reptile brain, that when people act on it, it's greed and it's oppression and it's injustice. Oftentimes. The second part, just higher than that, is the spirited, which has to do with strong emotions, anger, things that kind of pull you out of center. They're reactionary. It is a reactionary. So one is compulsive, the other is reactionary. In other words, the compulsive, the appetitive, is like, it's just a matter of time before you need to eat. That's you're stuck. You're on this fucking merry-go-round. On the other hand, you could go for months without getting angry. It's reactive. It's based on something that triggers it. Then the third and the highest part is the rational soul. I don't mean rational in terms of like, sitting there like people do, being, pretending that they're fucking sleuths on YouTube, detectives trying to think about what the new conspiracy is. That's not being rational. And also it's not the that very, I guess, perhaps quintessentially masculine coldness. That's like, stop crying, behave rationally. It's not that either, right? Because that's our word. Their word was logistikon, having to do with divine order, the part of the soul that is capable of imparting order, due order in this fucked up world, right? Because if we leave it to the appetitive, if we leave it to the material, if we leave it to the spirited, if we leave it to anger, there's no order. It's just a matter of time before everything fucking breaks down. So the rational, the logistikon, is really the ordering part of the soul, and it only makes sense that the ordering part of the soul should be the governor. It
Mm.
should be the guy who makes the decisions.
So
And so the Platonists believed that in order for a human being to be considered just, balanced, truly human, and not animalistic, the lower two parts of the soul, the part that was appetitive and the part that was spirited, had to willingly consent to be ruled by the higher. Willing consent there is very, very important, because that means, like I said in the beginning, you can't muscle it. The rational part of the self can't fucking force the other two to behave. Those parts of the self have to say, take the wheel. I give up.
mm,
Show us what is best.
that's fascinating. Yeah. And this whole time, meanwhile, we have everything in our modern day society trying to lend towards those lower parts and stifle out that higher
Oh
rationale.
yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah, because the minute that ordering self wakes up, it realizes I must sacrifice myself to make this situation right. And when we make the decision to give up our comforts, as hard as it is, maybe even our loved ones, when we make that decision because we know it's the right thing to do, and that's the right choice, is the only choice, that's when they're fucked.
Mm. Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any last
Thanks,
words?
man.
Any last words?
God bless you. Thank you. It's a pleasure. We need to chat more casually uh
Yeah,
sometime soon.
definitely. All right. Well, thank you all for listening. And yep, we will see you next time.